The real-life pain from Donald Trump's tariffs are hitting home. Volvo plans to cut up to 800 jobs at 3 U.S. plants over the next few months because of the economic uncertainty. That's a word you're going to want to remember. Mack Trucks are also, they've also announced hundreds of layoffs at a Pennsylvania plant. And shopping on sites like Temu and Shein, it will get more expensive for American customers. In the meanwhile, The Atlantic's David Frum writes, quote, as Trump's policies wreak havoc, the policy's author needs an excuse and someone to blame. Jerome Powell is that someone. The president floated the idea of firing the Federal Reserve chair after Powell warned Trump's tariffs will increase the cost of living. A reminder, folks. The Fed chair serves a 10-year term specifically to insulate them from political pressure. It's been that way since 1951, and presidents cannot fire the Fed chair without cause. Joining us now is MSNBC anchor, soon-to-be anchor of the new Primetime Weekend, Catherine Rampell. She's one of the co-hosts. It debuts next month, and she's also a Washington Post columnist. Also with us here at the table is political strategist Lucy Caldwell. She served as campaign manager for Joe Walsh in the 2020 Republican presidential primary. Ooh, these ladies got a lot of titles.
They do have. They've been busy, and got a lot of good stuff coming up. Catherine, I want to just have us take a quick listen to Powell and Trump and regarding the impact of tariffs. Let's listen to this.
The level of tariff increases announced so far is significantly larger than anticipated, and the same is likely to be true of the economic effects.
We have a Federal Reserve chairman that is playing politics, somebody that I've never been very fond of, actually.
Tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation.
I think he's terrible, but I can't complain because we had the most successful administration economically in the history of our country. I think we're going to do even better this time.
You know, it just really presses so hard up against the nerve when I hear Donald Trump talk about people playing politics and all of that. He has posted on social media, Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. His pressure on Powell to step down, which won't happen until next year. Does that play any in this, or if people kind of bake that noise into it and are really just focusing on the real-time economic impact of an up and down, off again, on again trade policy that has roiled the markets and cost the economy about $6 trillion worth of value?
To be clear, the tariffs are abysmal. They are a terrible choice, whether the tariffs are coming on or off again. Terrible decision-making for this economy. Firing Jerome Powell would be much worse. So much worse. There is the potential that it could set off a global financial crisis. That's because we know historically that countries that have less independent central banks tend to have much worse inflationary outcomes and much worse outcomes on other economic dimensions as well, because the U.S. economy is so central to the rest of the world, and because our debt is used as a benchmark for the rest of the world to determine basically what are the safest of safe assets. Treasuries are considered the safest of safe assets. If suddenly all of that is politicized, we no longer have an independent central bank that's in charge of the money supply, that's going to set off cascading effects throughout financial markets around the world. And I want to be clear on something else. I actually interviewed Fed Chair Jerome Powell last fall and at a public event, and I tried really hard to get him to say something about the anticipated Trump economic agenda. And he was very, very cautious about not saying anything publicly, not demeaning anything that Trump had proposed at that point, which were only 10% tariffs, as well as mass deportations that will affect the labor force and things like that. He was very nervous, I believe, about not appearing politicized, right? He basically said, let's wait and see. Our job is that we are there to take the economy as it comes. We're not there to judge policies. And I think he just really didn't want to give Trump any additional ammunition to retaliate against the Federal Reserve, even as it was very clear that Trump would be taking actions that would put the Federal Reserve in an impossible position by both raising prices through tariffs and also slowing the economy also through tariffs. So all of that puts the Fed in this terrible, terrible position. If Trump had just done nothing at all, and you know, kind of gotten the joke, essentially, he would have inherited, or he did inherit, a great economy and potentially one, and
it
one
was
that
good.
would. Yes, it was very good, and we were so close to that coveted soft landing thanks to the Federal Reserve. Soft landing meaning we get out of this period of elevated inflation without a recession, and then Trump decided to go in and muck it up.
It seems, I guess, you know, it really matters who the president is and what the economic policy is. And, you know, perhaps he should have been grateful for that Biden economy. Look, Lucy, first of all, I feel like Jerome Powell is playing chess while Donald Trump is playing checkers. You know, he is taking every speaking engagement that he can to every Federal Reserve, of X city here. He is doing every little conference over there. And he's being very clear about what his what the facts are, to Catherine's point. He's not playing political games, but he's also not being scared. He's not hiding in his office. He is answering the questions very directly. Oh, will you leave if the president fires you? No. And you have the Wall Street Journal editorial board, which seems to be on the right side of history this month, saying the lesson of Trump versus Powell. Gotta be clear.
Right. They're part of the resistance.
Well, I mean, this month, the Wall Street Journal Ed Board is part of the resistance with this opinion. If the president wants faster growth and less market turmoil, they write, he can help by ending his tariff campaign, then get Congress to move on a tax and spending cut bill and press ahead with deregulation. The main lesson from Trump versus Powell is the central bank cannot make up for the economic policy errors of politicians. Inflation is Donald Trump's fault, is what the Wall Street Journal editorial board just said at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they are certainly saying, and this is what Jerome Powell has said in his address this week, he has said, we have had the foundation, as Catherine says, of a strong economy, and we can wait and see. And in terms of chess versus checkers, at the very least, he's showing himself to be much more of a statesman than Donald Trump. And you can see the way that the Trump lackeys are out there making the case for why, in fact, we actually need to cut interest rates. This is all about Trump wanting interest rates to be cut because somehow that will relieve this massive wound that Donald Trump is inflicting on our country with tariffs. But I think that we have to go to the macro here, which is the macro of Donald Trump, who, by the way, in that clip you showed, he said, I've never been fond of Jerome Powell. He is a person who made Jerome Powell the chair of the Federal Reserve.
Lucy. He appointed him in what, 2017?
Yeah, exactly. So you have to think about the fact that, again, we have to come back to the macro here, right? And the macro is Donald Trump showing a complete disregard for the rule of law. And it's easy to get tied up in the specifics of the policies. Like, well, would reducing interest rates, I mean, Europe is reducing interest rates, would reducing interest rates cause tariffs to how would they interact? What's the nexus of tariffs and inflation and interest rates? But the bigger macro here is a president who is so disinterested in separation of powers, in the rule of law, in the role of an independent Federal Reserve, that he is saying, basically making threats to Jerome Powell, who is doing exactly what he should be, right? And is what we need all chairs of commissions to do. And we have to keep our eye on the macro. That is what is at stake here. And he's going to keep doing this for as long as he's allowed to do it. And we've got to stand up. And that is exactly what Jerome Powell is doing in his own way, in a way that is very professional, very statesmanlike, and exactly what is right for this moment.
Very true. I mean, also, a tariff is a tax that the American people pay.